was the coveted trophy of both Hitler and Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring. Both men sought to outmaneuver one another to capture it for their personal collections. Its fame and beauty aside, they saw the work as a symbol of Aryan supremacy and idolized the artist who created it as an exemplary figure in Teutonic history. They were undoubtedly aware of its recent past. Panels owned, questionably, by the King of Prussia and on display in Berlin before the First World War had been returned to Ghent under the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, a source of outrage to the German people. If Hitler could recapture the Altarpiece, then he would right a perceived wrong against Germany. Rumor had it that Hitler was also convinced that the painting contained a coded map to lost Catholic treasures, the so-called Arma Christi, or instruments of Christ's Passion, including the crown of thorns and the spear of destiny. Hitler believed that the possession of the Arma Christi would grant their owner supernatural powers. Hitler and other Nazi officials were fascinated by the occult and assembled a research group, the Anna Nerva, to study and seek out supernatural phenomena and magical objects. Hitler financed expeditions into Tibet to capture a Yeti, the so-called abominable snowman, for military use, to Iceland to look for the entrance to Thule, a mythical land of giants and telepathic fairies, which was the real place of origin of the Aryans, according to Hitler's belief, and in search of religious relics whose magical properties could ensure Nazi triumph, including the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. As the prospect of a Nazi victory looked more precarious, Hitler escalated his efforts to find supernatural means to turn the tide. But Göring outmaneuvered Hitler's agents and reached the Ghent Altarpiece first. Against the Führer's direct orders, one of Göring's henchmen had stolen Van Eyck's masterpiece from a castle in the south of France, at the foot of the Pyrenees, and brought it to Paris. Then it disappeared. The whereabouts of the Ghent Altarpiece were unknown to both Allies and most Nazi officials. Posey and Kirstein had gathered frustratingly contradictory tidbits of information on its location until now. A Harvard-educated scholar of 13th century French sculpture, Hermann Bunyaes had worked as an art advisor to Alfred Rosenberg, chief of the ERR, Einsatzstab Rosenberg, the Nazi art-looting division, the existence of which, at this point, was still unknown to the Allied army. He had also been a personal art consultant to Göring, who had used the disorder of war to steal thousands of works for his private collection. Bunyaes had deserted the Nazi cause in disgust. The tipping point had been a dinner at the elite Aero Club in Berlin, when Bunyaes realized that his meal was being served on silver stolen from the Jewish baron Edmond de Rothschild. Bunyaes had records of what art had been stolen by the Nazis and where it was hidden. Drinking cognac in his cottage, he shared all he knew about the Nazi art-looting program and Adolf Hitler's master plan to steal the world's art treasures. For the first time, the Monuments Men had a sense of what they were up against, and of the fate of tens of thousands of the world's most important and beautiful works of art. Bunyaes began to tell Posey and Kirstein about the citywide super-museum Hitler was planning in his boyhood town of Linz, Austria, which was meant to house every masterpiece in the world. Aside from a place to view and study art, this museum would function as a gallery of defeated nations, their treasures stripped from them as countries fell before Hitler's stormtroopers. In lieu of the severed, pike-pierced heads of deposed and decapitated kings, Hitler would fill his super-museum with the artistic masterpieces that Europe had been unable to defend. Bunyaes seemed to think that the Allies already knew of Hitler's dream to create this super-museum. He thought that Posey and Kirstein were aware of the lists of masterpieces sought by the Führer, by Göring, and by the ERR. Posey and Kirstein tried to disguise their surprise as the revelations kept flowing. Finally, Bunyaes revealed the secret hiding places of the stolen Nazi art. On a map of Europe, he indicated scores of secret Nazi art depots in castles, monasteries, and mines throughout Nazi-occupied territory. The biggest cache of all, he said, was in an abandoned salt mine in the Austrian Alps, at a place called Altarpiece. It had been converted into a high-tech underground storehouse for all of the looted art destined for the super-museum at Linz. The stolen collection already numbered over 12,000 works, including masterpieces by Michelangelo, Raphael, Vermeer, Rembrandt, Titian, Bruegel, Veronese, Dürer, and Leonardo. Among the works in